I've done the math and I've been on like 35 Gobundance trips, national and international trips way back when, in 2008. This is in the top 3 of all my trips ever. Where we were, how Litan did it, the history of the region, and the guides. It made the whole gestalt was unbelievable.
Hey, listen up. Are you ready to take your life and business to unimaginable new levels? Not just new levels, but unimaginable new levels. Gobundance is a community for active entrepreneurial men and women who desire to live epic lives. With the Gobundance membership, you'll gain access to high-level trainings, collaborate with high-level millionaire entrepreneurs, get accountability through our GoPods. My GoPod and I have been together for 4+ years. They're amazing, and experience epic adventures around the world. Plus, you get access to Go Wives, Go Couples, access to Fambundance, to continual high-volume deal flow. Join this tribe. Trust me on this. There's a reason I pay my tuition every year. And succeed like you never have before. If you want the results you hear from members who are on this podcast, or even my own results, Gobundance is the pathway. It's as simple as applying and letting me or one of our ambassadors talk to you about what membership looks like at any level. Gobundance.com, apply, and we'll make sure we put you in the right community for you. Join us today. Back to the show. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is a really special episode. We got a panel, 3 GoBros. I'm going to start on my top left with Jared Pfaff, Litan Yahav, and of course, the dude himself, Tim Rhode. Guys, welcome. Good to see y'all.
Welcome, Jamie. Thanks for having us.
Of course, of course. We're going to talk today about a trip all of you plus more took. Well, not all of you, I guess. 2 of you took to meet the other, plus another dozen guys or so, to Israel. So this was a Gobundance, either sponsored or just a Gobundance brother trip, if you will. And Litan, you are there. You're present. You're visible. You're on the ground in Israel. What started this? Did you solicit everybody, or did everybody come to you and say, hey, we want to come bombard you and your family and your country?
The latter, man. It was so I was out in the Bigger Pockets event in October, and there were like 50 GoBros out there by chance, and we all got together and did some amazing stuff. And while we're out there, it's like some guys, and I talked specifically, Pat and Tim and James Aduna and a bunch of other guys are like, dude, you're from Israel. You got to arrange a trip to Israel. And I was like scratching my head. All right, if you guys, all right, sure, let's do it. And I had no idea how I was going to do it, but that sort of initiated the whole thing back in October. And it just kicked off, and I posted on Facebook, who's interested.
Yep. And how many actually ended up coming?
So there were 9 of us. So 8 guys came out and me.
Got it. Tim, for you coming from California, first I'm curious, which way do you fly? Do you go like around the world that way or around the world this way to get to Israel?
This way. Yeah, across like Dallas to London to Tel Aviv. However, my flight team did not do a great job because I could have just gone San Francisco straight to Tel Aviv.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
Well, lesson learned.
Yeah,
what was
James
it about
and Alvin had better flight people, I guess. So.
I'll bet they did. What about this trip for you was intriguing? Why go?
Well, I just always wanted to go to the Middle East, and it was kind of a bucket list thing that I honestly never thought I'd have the chance. And then when I think Pat was talking to Litan, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that too. And the next thing I knew, it was coming together. Unfortunately, Pat Hyben could not go on this one because he had a couple graduations he had to attend. So
yeah. You couldn't be there with your running mate there. Yeah,
exactly. Would have been even funner, but if you believe that, Jared. My goodness, it couldn't have been, but Hyben would have added to it for sure.
Always does. Jared, where did you come in on this? Why did this intrigue you? Why make the trip?
Well, I've always had an interest in getting out of, I'm from Indiana, the Midwest, and typically, leaving the state is typical at some point, but I wanted to kind of get out of my comfort zone, see a different perspective of the world that I haven't seen before. This was my first opportunity at a far overseas trip. So I just wanted to get out of my comfort zone, kind of learn the culture of the Middle East and the other area, and just kind of see you know, you hear what the media says all the time, but I kind of wanted to see for myself, you know, kind of how that area looked, what the culture was like. And then you can't go wrong traveling with a bunch of awesome guys.
What was for you, what was the most, I don't know, surprising? What stands out from having visited, maybe perception versus reality for you?
I think the biggest difference was, you know, before I went, everybody was sending me, you know, messages, hey, be safe, be careful, you know, it's dangerous over there. But really when we got over there, you know, everybody was so friendly. The culture was totally different. And then what I would have expected, everything was super nice and clean. And some of that's probably some of the areas that we were at, but I just got a totally different respect for the people over there, the Middle East. And, you know, it's just really neat to kind of debunk that myth. There are things going on, but, you know, I think from a standpoint, we kind of talked about that Chicago is a more dangerous area than what Israel really is. So, you know, people often travel to Chicago, but they think Israel is a foreign place that's too dangerous to go to. So I think that was a big changing mindset for me.
Litan, I live in, as we talked about, the Dominican Republic, and everybody asks the same question, and I get why. Is it safe? Is it safe? And I mean, the sarcastic northeasterner in me goes, no, there's a guy with his knife to my neck right now. Like, that's why I moved here. Adventure, right? But obviously, we wouldn't have moved here if I didn't feel safe. The thing people hear about coming to a place like the Dominican or Jamaica or whatever is don't leave the resorts. It's not safe. And what I try to explain is, well, look, you could be pickpocketed. You know, if you go to the wrong places and you have your cell phone in your hand while you're walking down the street, a bike's going to zip by, take your phone, they'll change the SIM card and sell it. Like, people aren't hacking people with machetes on the regular. That's just not reality. I know in Israel, there's the Palestine conflict. There's all this discussion about that. Jared saw a perspective he didn't get before, that it's safe. You're there. Obviously, you feel safe, but what's real? Like, what's the balance? What's the real story on the ground?
So short answer, yes, it's safe. Long answer is it depends. It depends when and where. So like a week before the guys came out, there was and this happens like every few years, maybe recently more frequently. There are these like rocket attacks, and it happens either from Gaza or from the north, from Lebanon. These happen every so often, and when it happens, we're all like used to what we do in those types of situations, and no one really stresses out too much from it. What we were afraid of, and I was afraid personally, is that this was like a week before the guys came out. And I was like, shit, are they going to panic and not come out? And I spoke with the touring company, and they're like, don't worry, we're used to this. If anything happens, that we'll go, everything's fine. And no one said anything, and everyone was cool about it. And I was like, awesome, these guys are ready for it. And it's, yeah, they'll attest to this, but everything feels really safe around you.
Yeah.
You see we can dive into a bunch of aspects of that, but everything is really safe.
Yeah. Well, you said it, Jared, a moment ago, and Litan, you can speak to this, but like even here, I can find unsafe if I want to. I can find it. You can find it in south side of Chicago. You can find it on the west side of Baltimore. You can find it all over San Francisco right now, I would guess, Tim. You could tell me better than anybody, but
no, I couldn't. I wouldn't go there.
Good point. Fair point, right? You go to Israel where people perceive it to be unsafe, but not even a couple hours up the road to San Fran. But for you, Litan, make that distinction. When I say I can find unsafe, I know what I mean here. What does that mean in Israel?
Listen, I would not, as an Israeli at least, go into certain areas of the West Bank personally, because I'd feel that's unsafe. By the way, there are Americans and other foreigners that go into those areas of the West Bank and feel totally safe, because it's in their interest for you to feel safe, because they do want people to come, and tourism, stuff like that. Other than that, I wouldn't say there are many areas that aren't safe. Like, there is very low crime rate in Israel. No one's afraid. I remember growing up so I grew up in Santa Monica, and growing up as a 9-year-old, my parents people used to warn me not to go out late at night because I get killed for my Nike pumps. Remember those shoes?
Yeah.
When we moved to Israel, it was like I was taking buses alone at 9. And so it was like, that was the mentality. And it still is sort of like that. So there's really high sense of personal safety.
Yeah.
Only times when it feels a little less safe, and when there are those like episodes, like rockets and stuff like that.
What is that? If you don't mind, I don't want to get too into this, but what does that look like? You say, I mean, I'm picturing Tel Aviv, a thriving city, whatever, and then a rocket hits, right? Like, to your point, my asshole would pucker a little bit if I'm a week out from traveling to this place. Like when you say rockets, can you give us a visual? Can you walk us through what is that looking? Where are you? What does that feel like? What gets hit? Give us a sense of that, please.
So we have people around us that don't want us to be here. All right. In the South, in the North, in the Northeast, all over the place. And these people, organizations, they don't really have very sophisticated means to intimidate. So what they do have is like more primitive types of ammunition, guns, and rockets. And what a rocket is basically is you take a rocket that you can imagine, you point it in a certain angle and direction, and you fire it. Hopefully it hits. So what happens is then you have rocket. Then when there are all these issues that happen, they'll fire these rockets. This time it was from the Gaza Strip. And so there's a radius of where they can hit these rockets. Tel Aviv is in that radius. So over the years, what the military has developed are counter missiles to those rockets. And so what happens if there's a rocket that's launched from the Gaza Strip, the radars identify the rocket, and then alarms go off in the towns which are in the vicinity of where that trajectory of the rocket is supposed to fall. And then many times the Iron Dome, which is those counter missiles, go out and destroy the rocket. That's what like the way it works, right? And it sounds like when I say it, it's like surreal, like holy shit, we live in a country where the rockets encounter. But anyway, I guess we're too used to it, but that's sad. But anyway, so what happens when that happens? There are always bomb shelters around. Every house or apartment by regulation has a bomb shelter. So when an alarm goes out because a rocket was fired or many rockets were fired, people go into that bomb shelter and they wait in for like a few minutes until either they hear an explosion or the time goes by. And an explosion most of the time will be Iron Dome, a counter missile hitting a rocket. You can see it, you can hear it.
And that does it.
And that does it, yeah, basically.
Interesting. I mean, look, there's no difference really. You know, I think there are travel advisories in a lot of European nations going to the United States because of mass shootings. So it's unfortunately become a bit desensitized and normalized in the US to have a mass shooting, a school, a mall, a church, or whatever it is. This is sort of that version for Israelis of what mass shootings are for Americans, I would guess, right? It's sort of like no American would say, I feel unsafe. Not no American. Most Americans wouldn't say I feel unsafe in the United States, but if you're looking from the outside in, it's like, it looks crazy, even just being outside the country for the last year. A consideration for us was, and we don't use public schools, but do we want to go back? Like, we don't hear about mass shootings here. You know, there's other crime, but we don't hear about that stuff. But you do in the US. So I think that provides a perspective on when somebody hears rockets in hitting cities or whatever. That's like you said, there's a normal protocol for that. Like we have some normal protocols, unfortunately, for school shootings. Did you have something you want to follow up on that?
Well, in Israel, we don't have. I mean, even when these sort of things happen, you rarely hear about any fatalities or injuries on our side.
Yeah.
So it's like that's maybe one of the reasons it's sort of taken for granted. The only issue that you have a lot of like trauma, like kids in the middle of the night waking up and going to a bomb shelter, kids at school going to a bomb. And obviously, the other side gets a lot of shit as well, right? I mean, because most people. It's not their fault that there are these terrorist organizations and that they fire these rockets from hospitals and schools. And so it's like, it creates a really screwed up situation. But yeah. I get what you're saying though.
That makes sense. Tim, what about you? What was something you saw, a perspective shift, something that was new to you, something that was interesting? Was there any one thing or one moment that you want to reflect on?
I don't want to reflect on one thing, but I will say I've done the math and I've been on like 35 Gobundance trips since before we were Gobundance, and we started doing, national and international trips way back when, in 2008. This is in the top 3 of all my trips ever.
Why is that? Yeah, you got to get into that.
Like 4 things. Number 1, Litan did an amazing job of putting it all together. That's number 1. Number 2, and I want us to touch on this, all the cool people that he brought into it from the military side, and I'd love it for us to touch on that.
Sure.
What cool things he did there. The guides were just incredible, both in Israel and Jordan. they just didn't shut up. They were so enamored with what they do and what they're teaching us. And they'd done, thousands of trips. So they knew the history and where we were and why it was significant inside out and backwards. And they just loved to share it with us. And number three, what's happened there throughout the generations and stuff, just where we were and just walking amongst, in the Holy Land and stuff. So where we were, how Litan did it, the history of the region and the guides. It made the whole gestalt was unbelievable. And now that I'm back and reflecting, I'm like, holy shit, that was spectacular.
That's cool. Jared, with Litan having like military connections and what you saw, like, who Litan may really be over in Israel, are you afraid of him?
I would say he's got some pretty good confidence. He's got a big heart, big family guy. So that was kind of cool to see that.
Afraid would have been cooler, man. You got to go for ratings sometimes, Can you like? We'll replay that one. We'll edit it out and we'll make him sound much scarier. But what about you? What was like the going to see all the things is great, but being with these guys in particular, the 8 or 9 guys that were there, why was that special? Like what made that? I don't know. Would the trip have been the same without? I guess the answer is no, but why? Why was the trip enhanced by being around 8, 9 other GoBros?
I think the big thing was, with Litan being there, there's a couple other guys that had ties or had lived in Israel or have connections to the surrounding area. So it was just really neat to see all the different perspective. I don't think we would have got probably, a tenth of the wealth of knowledge, if it wouldn't have been for the awesome guides, if it wouldn't have been for, Litan and the other guys setting up the trip, if it wouldn't have been for Israeli Unlimited for the awesome things they did. And then it all, not to skirt around your question, but I also want to give a lot of credit out to the elders as well, because if they wouldn't have started this community, these trips would have never happened. So I think the power was in the people that were there and they were present. Everybody got along very well. Everybody was, willing to go deep and ask great questions. So it's neat to see, people from a diverse background and kind of see the questions they have, whether it's for religion or military, because then it allows you to pick up information you might not have thought about. But I think, just being in a tight quarters with all the other guys, eating together, bunking together, there's a lot of great conversations that wouldn't materialize if you weren't in a spot with, a bunch of people and spending that amount of time with them. So conversations were great. We just had a blast. There's many times that, we got laughing so hard, whether it was late at night or during the bus trips or, in the Wadi Rum desert, flying down the desert with no driver in the truck, essentially, that we just laughed so hard that we cried. And
all right, wait. There was a truck without a driver in the desert.
So
do your yell.
This could be an hour's worth of conversation or more, but I won't dig in too deep. But essentially, long story short, everything just fell into place on this trip. And part of that was the guides that we had and the days that we were certain places. And some of it was because people had to change their schedule. So all these things, all these stars lined up. And, kind of getting to the guy in the trucks, we had this young 23-year-old young guide, Abdullah. And then we also had an older gentleman, I think he was in his upper 60s, 68, 69 range. And they were our guides for the day. And, we just thought we were going to go out for a sweet ride through the Wadi Rum desert. We didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. What can you possibly do for 7 hours out in the desert? But we were essentially thinking of yourself on the back of a mid-sized Toyota pickup. We got cushioned seats for about 3 on both sides. And, the hood of the truck is all wrapped up because it looked like the truck might have been rolled or hit some stuff before. But, there's 5 of us at that point in the Jordan Wadi Rum desert. And, it started off pretty tame and we started stopping by these Bedouin camps. And every time we turned a corner, it was just like a whole nother amazing experience that day, you know, and that was from, you know, climbing some tall hills, you know, scaling rock, seeing these neat rock formations that just look unreal. The canyons that we went through, playing volleyball, playing soccer with the Bedouin people. And as the day went along, that Abdullah stopped a few times. We learned how to dance, their dance. So that was pretty cool. And we just started kind of creating this bond with those two. And, you could just see his smile getting wider and our smiles getting wider. And the longer the day went on, the faster he would start driving when we started hollering from the back. So, he was tail whipping through the desert, and it's just like, you could just see how big a smile was. And then all of a sudden the driver door would open, the passenger door would open. And those two guys are essentially standing on the edge of the truck, looking at us while the truck's probably going 50, 60 mile an hour through the desert. And they're just smiles are a mile wide. And it was just the neatest experience. And you can ask James Aduna this, he can attest. I'd stand up and yell and he'd be grabbing me by the belt, pulling me back to sit down to shut up. He was, we got the pictures and the videos to prove it. So if you ever get a chance,
we gotta get that B-roll.
I'll back him up on that.
Go ahead, Tim.
Jared would be yelling and just acting like a wild banshee. And James is, we're going to die. No, he's got to slow down.
Oh, he wasn't cool. He wasn't like, sit down, young buck. He was freaking the fuck out.
He was freaking the fuck out. And the rest of us, Alvin, Michael, Jared, and I just freaking laughing our balls off, just dying laughing at James. It'll never work. We're all going to die. And Jared's like, faster. And the guy's hanging on to the truck. And it was just insane. But like nothing's going to happen because you're in the middle of the desert. And it was just, besides some things to hit, it would have been just fine. So
James was going to be on this, but we had a conflict with his time and he bowed out, which I actually asked him to just so I didn't have to coordinate 12 different people's schedules. But James is like an in shape, stoic, confident dude. Like he's not even here to defend himself, but it sounds like he was, I don't know.
He backed us up to, yes, all those things you said, but it was a little over the top. It was not your normal thing with driving like that. But hanging out, we had no idea who was driving because the dude was literally, he must have had a freaking toe on the wheel or something. We couldn't figure out how he was driving it.
Out of the car. We got to get that footage. And Jeff, I'll have you put some B-roll over this for the YouTube video because that would be cool to kind of watch as you guys are explaining it. If you got some video of this, that would be amazing. So we'll grab that from you.
Yeah, I can send that over. But there's a couple times of videos, where we fall down in the truck bed because he turns hard and somebody flies across the truck bed. But yeah, it was fun. We asked him when we got done with that. We said, hey, you get to have this much fun every day. And he said, most rides are nice and calm. He said, usually everybody wants to go nice and slow. But he said, the louder you yell, the more I push the gas, is what he told us.
Yeah, you got a bunch of alpha-driven dudes coming up. I'm sure it got louder and louder. Litan, I want to real quick level set, and I want to dive deeper into the importance of this being with other GoBros and everything else. I want to really capture that part, but can you just at least lay out how many days, where'd you go? What was the itinerary? What did this look like?
So the trip formally started on a Sunday and formally ended on a Saturday night. All right. Okay. So it was like exactly a week. Some guys came in Friday, some came in Saturday, the day before. And Saturday night, I think everyone was already in and we went out to dinner, all of us in Tel Aviv. So everyone stayed in Tel Aviv. And so I think with the first 2 days, Sunday and Monday, we're in Tel Aviv, Jaffa, there's some experiences around that. Then Tuesday went up to Akko through Caesarea and did a whole trip across up and down the coast, and saw some ruins and old cities. And then I'm just walking you through the days, right? And then Wednesday we drove down, went to Jerusalem, and then from Jerusalem down to the desert. Stayed in a in the middle of nowhere, basically. It's like a Bedouin type experience. And then Thursday, woke up at 4 a.m. to climb this old age fortress on a mountain for sunrise called Masada.
I'm taking a look at it right now so we can get a kind of sense here. So you started here in, Tel Aviv area, and you went south to Jerusalem?
So we started in Tel Aviv.
Yep.
All right. And then we went up. You see Haifa, north of Tel Aviv. And north of Haifa, there's another town called Akko. All right. That happened on Tuesday, back and forth. And then Wednesday, we drove from Yaffo, from Tel Aviv, basically to Jerusalem, and then east of Jerusalem, or southeast of Jerusalem, to the desert. And then we were around there Wednesday and Thursday. Thursday morning, we went up that mountain and we were at the Dead Sea, floating on the Dead Sea.
Is this the Dead Sea right here?
It is. That's the Dead Sea.
Is that the Dead Sea or the Red Sea?
No, that's the Dead Sea. The Red Sea is even more south. So the Dead Sea is the lowest place on Earth, essentially. It's not essentially, it's actually that's where it is. It's really, really low and really hot. It was like crazy hot when we were there. And it was really cool. And so Thursday we were at the Dead Sea, and then drove up to Jerusalem, and then it was Jerusalem for the rest of Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then Saturday night, some guys left, and then Sunday the other group went over to Jordan. And you guys were in Jordan, I think, until Thursday, right?
Yes, we had 2 full days, but like from the Dead Sea back to Jerusalem, we're driving along, and all of a sudden they pull off. Where the heck are we? And they have a lunch out in the middle of nowhere that's just catered, top-notch steaks, chicken, seafood. You're just out in the middle of nowhere overlooking like I think we could see the Dead Sea on one side, and it was just in the middle of nowhere. And we have this gourmet meal, and all throughout the trip, there was just all these cool, are you freaking kidding me? This is where we are, and we're eating like this. And of course, the wind comes up and blows over the awnings and stuff. And it's just, it was very real everywhere we went.
Yep. Well, you had to go through the West Bank then, yeah?
Yep.
Is that, I mean, like you were saying before, is that like a puckered drive for you, just knowing where you are, or is it like?
So I mean, it's a very main road. So there are a lot of main roads that are not dangerous at all. You go through checkpoints to go in and out, but that's not the dangerous part. There are other more dangerous parts within the West Bank. That's not one of them.
Got it. Makes sense. All right, cool. Thanks for that. I want to get into the a little bit deeper, and we can stay with you, Litan, and we'll go over to you, Tim, after this. But so give me a little bit of context on, it's so hard to capture this. I talked to a lot of people about Gobundance. They're like, what is it? I kind of get it. Like, why would I join this thing to hang out with people or whatever? Right. So I'm kind of curious on a trip like this for you, or maybe you observed for somebody else. You can name them or not name them. That's completely up to you, Litan. But what is it, or what was it about this trip that was transformational, that you saw or felt or observed? Why? What is it about a trip like this with these guys that created change or transformation in somebody's life?
So for me, who lives on the other side of the world, and I've been part of Gobundance for like 2.5 years, I don't get much FaceTime with GoBros. And for me, that was like amazing. So just like anecdotal, driving up and down the coast in this small bus, just the 9 of us, and having these really deep conversations in the bus, everyone going around and giving their like backstory from their childhood until today, everything, like no boundaries, talking about everything personal, just like really deep conversations. That for me was like this essence of Gobundance. Like we've never met, most of us, for me, I mean, I think I only met like a few guys before.
At the BP conference, right?
And then like, from the get-go, just to open up and go deep on everything, it for me is like the essence, like the trust, the openness, the no judgment and no bullshit aspect of it. For me, it was amazing for the trip.
Makes sense. Tim, what about you? I mean, you've been on 35 of these, but this one being a top 3, but can you try to capture this?
It was a little different than most. We did not do one sheets.
I was going to ask you if you did.
I forgot a freaking banner.
Oh,
Yeah, Pat Hyman. Oh my goodness, did I hear it on that one? And he also said, why didn't you guys do one sheets? And instead, like Litan said, we did our life stories. Where did you come from? You know, what is your essence? Who are you? And what are you all about? And why is that? And like Litan said, we did this on the bus as we were crossing Israel, looking out at all the beautiful sights and stuff while you're listening to your GoBros basically share their life story of who they are, why they are, and it just helped bonded us. I'm, you know, no offense to us and what we created with the one sheets and all the stuff that we're supposed to do, but I think that's one of the cool things about these custom trips that our GoBros, you know, bring on and make happen is the crew kind of dictates what's going to be, and that's part of GoBundance. We're not a guru-led tribe. We're a member-led tribe, and that's one of the things that sets us apart. So
yeah, this was an informal trip in many ways. Like, it was all GoBundance members, but it wasn't like an advertised, you know, we hired a tour company, obviously, type of trip. This was just, hey, I'm doing this. Come on out, right? To there you go. Come on out.
Yeah,
and
but we did hire a group, you know, a tour. So
Yes.
it's kind of like yes and no.
A blend.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I got assigned to arrange this trip, I was like, I'm not going to take all the responsibility on myself for this to be epic. I need to hire a really good company.
Smart.
And this company, Israel Unlimited, does a lot of these types of trips, you know, for YPO delegations and stuff like that. And it was like, I heard a lot of really good responses from them, and so it needed to be epic, and I chose them. And I think it was a smart decision, right, guys? I mean, I'm sure it would not have been as fun if I would have done everything end to end, for sure.
You're inspiring me. I got to do something down here in the DR. I'm sure a lot of people would love to see parts of this country.
Yep.
So, Jared, give me a perspective for you. I'm curious, like, paint the picture, create the, like, what was it? What was something, again, a takeaway, something you saw that inspired you or inspired somebody else? What's a moment or a way that you can capture the essence of a trip like this?
So I think going back to what those guys highlighted on, you know, just being in the bus and seeing somebody get super vulnerable with struggles that they're having in their life, you know, struggles and challenges that they've overcame, you know, where did they start out at and where they are now, speaking a lot to their, you know, what are they doing to be a better father, a better husband, a better, you know, leader for their community. And it was just neat to see, because a lot of times people only tell you their wins, and I think, you know, this is a place where people feel safe, like Litan and Tim mentioned. You know, people can come out there and just spill their guts because they know that somebody's not going to judge them and look down upon them. They're actually going to do the opposite, and they're going to try to lift them up if there's something they can help with. So just to see the magnitude of the power of brotherhood and how much people want to help, you know, and are inspired by your story. And even though, you know, everybody has a different story, you know, there's something in that story that typically fires somebody else up, or, you know, they have a challenge that they've been through or know somebody that they can help. So it was just really neat, you know, whether it was on the bus ride, you know, conversations with a roommate, you know, a conversation over dinner that just, you know, went a direction that you weren't expecting. And, you know, it's just powerful whenever to get around people that want to lift you up instead of, you know, people that want to, you know, pull you down and maybe, you know, minimize you.
Man, I haven't done this sort of adventure yet, an international trip. It's on my bucket list to do one of these years, but I know just I've been to a million other events, and at all of those, I can't tell you how many times I've heard and have even said to others, like, I haven't told anybody this, but so I can imagine when you're in proximity to one another, that's got to be like the prevailing statement, or even maybe just a given. So why even say it at this point? Does that represent it fairly well?
100%, because there's guys on the trip, you know, and they may be, you know, 50 years old, they may be, you know, in their 30s, and it's something that they've never told anybody else before, and they have a hard time, articulating that because they don't know what the reaction is going to be. But whenever you're in a group of people that is safe and they're not going to go spill the beans to somebody else, most of the time you probably hear somebody's story that they've never ever told to family, friends, best friend, and it's neat to see that deep connection because it's hard to always feel comfortable, giving that information to somebody else because you don't know what they're going to do with it.
Yeah. You guys in Jerusalem, I think it's Jerusalem. This is going to be a bad Christian thing. Did you visit Christ's tomb? Are you able to?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was where the power of hiring a good guide came in because, when we made it to the church, and I think that was one of the powerful things of the trip is just, the time we spent around the religion side of it, it was really neat to get a different perspective of all the different religions. So I think that was powerful for me. And if I remember right, there's 6 religions that kind of claim that church. And Litan, if I'm saying something wrong, you can correct me.
I'd love to hear from him, but go ahead, keep going.
But the interesting thing, on having a guide is there's so much information that was given that if you would have just walked through it, you wouldn't have had the same experience. So, for instance, I was looking to get some rosaries for some family members, and he told me, he said, hey, wait, we'll get those blessed on, the preparation stone. So when we walked in, we were able to see the preparation stone where Jesus was prepared. And then we went over to the tomb that was in the center of the church. And typically, I think it was a 2 to 2.5 hour wait. And Avi, our guide, he's like, hey, there's multiple different doors to this tomb, but nobody goes in on the Egyptian side. So we kind of snuck past all the different, not snuck, but we went around all the different lines. And, there's 2 ladies in front of us and we were in and out within like 2 or 3 minutes. So where most people would normally spend a lot of time, multiple hours waiting, we were able to do that. And then one last story before you switch it over. Another neat point is our guide was a jokester, so it was fun to hear all of his dad jokes, and he kind of would, guys were pushing back, so we'd ask him questions, and he would answer with humor sometimes, and at some point, you don't know when humor and when reality strikes. So we were in the church and Adrian asked, he asked Avi, he said, hey, that rope to the bell over there, would you mind if I pull that? And I think Avi's response was, well, if you want to be naughty. So of course, Adrian reaches up to grab that rope and starts pulling it. And he's, I'm not sure what the proper name is, but these guys that were very serious, all dressed up in black, they jumped out of their seats and started, the look on their face was, it was time for us to get out of there, or at least move on. So the joke after that was, if you're being serious, or, don't challenge somebody that's in the room. So that was pretty funny.
Then Litan steps in, the most dangerous man in the world. Everyone just recedes. I could see it. Litan, if you don't mind expanding a little bit on the 6 religion thing, can you encapsulate that?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I wasn't with them during that day. They went into the tomb.
Got it.
And honestly, I'm not religious at all.
Yeah.
And so it's like all these stories Avi told, like the tour guide told him, I was learning myself as well when I was with them. I didn't know all that stuff.
Yeah.
I probably did that whole tour once, and that was many, many years ago, probably during the military. So I can't add too much to those stories.
That's good.
Yeah.
No, look, I'm a standard Catholic, which means essentially after confirmation, I haven't gone back to church. And Tim, I take you as more spiritual than religious as well. But even still, like, it's Jesus Christ's tomb. That had to be chilling in some ways, no?
And yes, that was amazing. And also the museum in Jerusalem, where like we saw this scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and just all this history that I'm honestly not a religious person. I didn't study it that well. But you've heard about all of it.
Sure.
So everywhere we went, it'd be like, this is where the Last Supper was, as an example. And I could just go on and on of all the different things. Wow, this is where that was. So it was amazing in that light. And that one thing we haven't touched on is the freaking food everywhere we went was just out of this world, just unbelievably fresh and wholesome and tasty. And I was just blown away.
Not processed. It's not in a box somewhere.
Nary a box.
Here's my
Nary
big question though.
box.
The Last Supper, did you see the table? And if you did, is it literally like one long table where everybody sits facing the same direction? That never made sense to me.
No, way different, right? Right, Jared?
That's right. Yeah, it was gone. It must have been sold off in hard times.
I'll bet. That's interesting. That's interesting. How did contribution show up on this trip, or giving back? I'm sure it did in some way, shape, or form between you guys. Or was there anything that you did along the lines of contribution? Or I don't know. I'm just kind of curious if it was a part of this trip.
No.
We're just debunking all Gobundance things. Like no one sheet.
I'm sorry.
No contribution. Fuck it.
Well, they get like the guys and all the people that were there got really nice tips.
Yeah,
that was
That's
really
what I was going to
generous.
ask you, to be honest with you. Like, was there pooling of money for tips and that sort of thing? So
Yeah, they gave it to the wrong person. They all said, "Hey, Tim, you should have all the money." So they gave me like $800, and it just sat in a pocket. And at the end, it was time to divvy it, and I just gave it all to Avi, the one guy. And Adrian just kind of went, "Oh my God, we gave it to the wrong person." I go, "You guys, back in time, I was on point. I was on my game. And now I'm just in a different phase of life and I'm more in flow. And you guys gave it to the exact wrong person you should have." So yeah, they thought being the leader that I would lead, but they were wrong. So just what can I say?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me to listen to all of you guys talk about this trip as somewhat sightseeing, but more the camaraderie. And when I mean, honestly, like I Googled it. This is my confession. I'm like, I think Christ is buried in Jerusalem. But to me, that would be like, oh man, we got to see Christ's tomb, right? Like most people that would be a big thing if they've never been to, I've never been, if they've never been to Israel or Jerusalem. But that's not how all of you talked about this trip. So I guess the question I have, and I'm wondering, and any of you could take this, was the guided experience even necessary in some ways? Or was it simply being together with people and just doing whatever the essential part of this trip? Or is there a blend here?
I think there's definitely a blend to that, because I don't think we would have got near the information and the knowledge that we got. And I think that was a big part of it that a lot of people wanted to see. So it was an adventure, it was religious to some extent, and it was, a wealth of knowledge of a lot of different areas. And even the guys that had been there, Michael had talked a little bit to that, is, there's a lot of things that he didn't know, going in and learning. So our guide, all the trips that he's taken, he could give us the down low and the backstories of all that. And, we had to fact check him sometimes because, he joked around with us so much. Sometimes we didn't know if he was joking full of it or if he was giving us the facts, but no, it was really good to have the guide. I think that was a very important part of it. And I think, future trips, a lot of people talk like they would definitely go guided. But I think that, the brotherhood is just, so powerful as well. So I think that the two blended made a difference.
Litan, for you. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think another piece of this that didn't have much to do with the guide, it was more Litan and his connections. If you could touch on that, Litan, the Mossad and the spy and the things we did that way.
Dangerous man in the world. Go for it, Litan.
Well, so first of all, I think, I was like blown away by the fact that the guys just flowed with it. Because it was a back-to-back schedule. Like it was running from one place to the other, and it was like no time. I felt a little like maybe we did too much. Like the guide did like a back-to-back, but I'm glad the guys had an amazing time. So And I do think like when you work with a guide and a touring company that does this all the time, they know how to structure things and put content into where many people are looking for it. And obviously the knowledge that they had was amazing. Connection wise, we're a small country, and because we also serve in the military, and it's like it's all about like network, and so everyone, it's really easy to get to almost every person in the country, and also even abroad. So like there's a funny story about that, and we can dive into that. Like, I think it's an interesting aspect of it.
Yeah.
That represents that. So before even the trip, this is Friday, Adrian he calls me from the airport in Miami, getting onto a flight with the Israeli airline El Al. And he's telling me, listen, they won't let me take my laptop on the plane. And they want me to ship it in luggage, and I won't do it. So I'm probably going to cancel or something. Like he's like really agitated. And I'm like, dude, what happened? And sort of when we dive into it, he's like, yeah, well, I mean, they asked me why I only have a one-way ticket, because he didn't have a return ticket. He had a one-way ticket to Israel. And they asked him why. And he said, yeah, because I'm continuing to Beirut. And I mean, he didn't even go through his mind like, dude, you don't tell, or you do tell, but you tell it in a certain way that from Israel, you're going to Lebanon. Like that opened a whole Pandora's box of questions. And like they started interrogating him. And if you know Adrian, like he has an interesting background. Like, right, his parents are from Syria. His wife moved to the US from Syria when she was 25 or 26. He used to go as a kid every year to Syria. It's like this guy's background is like, spy material. And so what they wanted, they didn't want him to bring a laptop. I don't even know the reasoning. And so he calls me and that happens. And I'm like, shit, what do we do? And so I made some phone calls and I guess I was lucky to reach the right person, and family helped a little, and like 30 minutes later, they say they called him on the airport, whatever speaker system, like telecom, So come forward, and they apologized, and they said they didn't know who he was and all that bullshit, and they brought him on the plane with everything he wanted, and so that was like, and it was like that happened within like 30 minutes, the whole thing, end to end, and so that was like I was even blown away by the speed that whole thing happened.
Sure. We got the Israeli James Bond here, and he's afraid to admit it. But go ahead, keep going.
And what another thing? So we had like an ex-Mossad or sort of deputy of the Mossad, head of the Mossad, come and talk with us, had lunch with us, and told some stories about his experience and how he sees the Middle East situation. So that was interesting. And also did some like spy game stuff, and went to a place, and there's this, the Netflix show Fauda.
I've heard of it. Haven't seen it. Yeah.
It's based on like this special forces military unit, the Israeli military. And that unit went and created this like civilian training facility for people to go and experience what it means to go through that type of training. So we went, so there was a bunch of different military type stuff, which was cool.
This really was once in a lifetime, man. That's incredible. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. We went to, also Israel is known for the startup scene in tech. And we went to visit also a friend of mine who runs a cool wellness startup, which was, it was interesting for me to hear him tell the whole story. I think for the guys as well. And all going back and forth to all these really cool places and history. So
no, that's amazing. That's amazing. I'm telling you, I'm afraid of you at this point. Next time, it sounds like you've been commissioned for a next time already, Litan. What you mentioned, back to back, the tour guide company, all of that, some things that really went well, or you're surprised went well, but anything you do differently or more of or less of next time, knowing what you know now?
So before the trip, there were like 50 guys who signed up on the Facebook group. And then I went down to 20 and then 10. I was like afraid that this is going to be, too little people, like not enough people. It won't be fun. People are going to be disappointed. And I feel like it's on me and it's my responsibility. But it ended up being even better that it was a small group of people, I think, more intimate and stuff like that. So I think next time we'll aim for that. Aim for keeping it small.
Yeah.
so that we all get to experience the same thing again, I think. And so other than that, I don't know, the guys should say more than I should, because I live here. So
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know if they would do it again the same way or not. So
yeah, Tim, anything, any insights on that? Like what, do you say, hey, you actually emphasis on this, or maybe I do this differently?
It was the perfect size trip as far as how many people. I'm really glad, 27 of us weren't there. It would have been a shit show. And we wouldn't have had the camaraderie. And I think what Litan did early on with the Fauda training, and he kind of underplayed the spy game. We literally met this amazing spy who taught us how to read people in a room. He did all these exercises. He kind of picked on Jared, actually. And then we went outside and we had to stop a spy who had a bomb, and we had to find out who it was. And then we were all trailing them, and we had to put a tracker onto their car. And so it wasn't just make believe. Well, it was make believe, but it was an actual mission. And this guy was working with all of us and telling us what to do. And then he did a debrief with us afterwards with the person who he had playing that spy. So that's freaking amazing shit.
I just booked a CIA spy for the podcast. His name is Andrew Bustamante. Maybe you've seen him on some stuff recently, and he's like, oh, I'll come down to the DR. We'll do it live. I'm like, God, I'm scared now. Like, what do you need to know about me? What are you going to know about me on this? But that would be fascinating, Tim. Yeah, you did underplay that, Litan. See, most dangerous man in the world, and doesn't want to even go into the dangerousest parts of himself.
That's how he rolls. He's way undersold. And by the way, just a quick thing, check out visor.co. Great company.
VYZER. Jared, anything for you? Highlights of the trip, things you do differently, things you keep the same. Any thoughts on that?
Sure. I think, the layout of everything was great. Litan mentioned that it was a lot of, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I love an action-packed adventure and a trip. So, and I think for most everybody would say the same thing. Everything was very well thought out, by, the people that Litan brought in, Israeli Unlimited. Everything was set up so well. It didn't really feel like too many days we were really rushed or pushed, but it also felt like, as soon as one thing was over, the next thing was starting. And it was, on those trips you go on, seems like you might have one or two highlights. We were getting like 5 or 6 highlights a day. So it was like every time, you thought you would hit the coolest thing of the trip, like an hour later, you're doing something else that tops that. And it's something, each thing was a little bit different. So, the religion portion versus the desert versus, Tel Aviv versus a startup, along with the Secret Service and in the military training was really cool. And maybe Litan can talk to that a little bit more on how, every person there, essentially goes to the military after they get to high school. I thought that was very, very neat and powerful in the sense of, men and women all going to the military and, being essentially having to, and what that means to them growing up and leadership and jobs. So I don't know. I think that's
anything you want to touch on that, and then I got a couple closing questions. We'll go from there. But anything you want to touch on military requirements in Israel?
Yeah. So in Israel, military service is mandatory. Every kid finishes high school. Women go in for 2 years, or now they go in for less. Men used to go in for 3, now they go in for less. So everyone serves. I was in the Navy for 6 years. So I stayed on for a little longer. I think the military service gives Israelis a sense of caring for others and themselves. And I think that really affects the personality and mentality of Israeli culture in a sense. I mean, keep in mind, like we go to college when we're 22, 23.
Right.
Because after the military, we work for a year, they go travel in the world for like 5 to 12 months. And so the experiences we all go through in the military and afterward are very different than most people in the world, I guess. And it puts us in a different mindset. Not a good one, to be honest, sometimes, because, kids, when they're 18, everyone goes and might experience trauma. And if you imagine, other military people around the world, reservists tend to have that trauma, and imagine everyone in Israel might have that. So I think it's obviously my wife doesn't want my kids to get drafted. So when they're 18, she wants us to be out of here. But I think it's a good experience.
Makes sense. Natural segue here goes to lotion. Tim, did you take any home?
Well, we went to the Dead Sea, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like a mile below sea level. Is that right, Litan?
I don't remember the exact number, but it is very.
It just blows me away. It's the
Wait.
lowest
How can a sea be below sea level?
Well, it's not a sea.
There. Yeah, but it is.
Just messing with you. That's my dad joke. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. So we all like you don't swim in the Dead Sea, you float because you can't swim really. And we all put mud all over ourselves and stuff. And it was just what an amazing experience. And then right there, they had a place where you could buy gifts. And so I bought a bunch of gifts and spent a lot of money on it. And I guess I'm not good at this. I put it all in my carry-on and all my gifts in London Heathrow. I had to put it all into one little bag. So 90% of it got thrown away. And what a rookie. But man, I was so cheerful as they were throwing all my gifts away. You could just imagine how on the way home, I'm tired, I'm grumpy, and they're throwing my freaking gifts away. So I was just so zen, handled it all so perfectly, like a true elder should have.
There you
I
go.
wish there was video.
Total value.
You son of a bitch! How dare you? I'm never coming through Heathrow. I'm telling everybody, don't ever go to England.
You total value thrown in the garbage in London?
Oh, I'd say over $400.
Oh my God. Sorry, man. Sorry. But you got some home, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I learned. I'll never do that again. So
there you go.
Live and learn.
Litan, I want to get your perspective real quick, then we'll wrap up. As a member of Gobundance overseas, not many of you, we were talking about it before we started recording. There's a couple in Australia. There's you. Earl might have been, maybe still is in Spain. I think he moved back to the US. There's some of us in like the Caribbean, Costa Rica, in the Eastern hemisphere. What is the experience for you like? Because I have conversations with people that are on that side of the world, and their fear is like, well, I don't know if I'm going to really get value from being a member of Gobundance. I can't participate in the live stuff as much as I'd like to, and I'm on the other side of the world for pod calls and all that. But just curious your perspective.
So for me, it was connecting with awesome people in the US that I can find, trust, and share and learn from. The initial motivation was I invest in the US mainly, and I only invested with Israelis, and I wanted to find Americans I can trust. That was like the motivation for me. And then I found a whole spectrum of reasons to stay, just like the pods and the conversations and, going to an event that is not even a Gobundance event and finding 50 GoBros at this event and just like hanging out is like, whoa, that's mind blowing. Yeah. So, yeah.
Got it. No, that's a great perspective. Great perspective. Any parting words from any of you? Final highlight of the trip you haven't shared yet. Tim, I'll start. Actually, I'll end with Tim. You're the elder. We'll start with the youngin. Let's go to you, Jared. Final highlight of the trip. Something you want to make sure everybody hears about.
I would say, a lot of the conversations and some of the quotes and stuff that were brought up, going back to a few different things. So going back to the Wadi Rum Desert, we sat there, we collected wood, and then we went and essentially Abdullah made lunch for us, and it was chicken, rice. Food was amazing, but we were sitting there kind of going around talking about, hey, what's coming up? Hey, what are we doing? And, he stopped us all and he said, why are you guys so worried about, what's next, what you've done? He said, you're here, you're in the desert, just be present. So I thought that was really powerful, coming from somebody that, has probably not traveled that far, but, has that piece of advice that a lot of times we worry about what's next, what's to come. And, a lot of times we don't just appreciate the moment that we're in. So I thought that was really powerful. I thought it was fun, going on a trip with Tim. I spent a little bit of time, but not a whole lot, but just, that was a really neat side to see is, sometimes we just take things too serious, and, Tim was having fun, his door game that he plays, I'm getting ready to go in the door and he slides in right in front of me. Messing with the border patrol women at, crossing the Jordan border, just, they didn't think it was too funny, but he did. It was just things like that every time you turned around, there was something new going on. And, just to see everybody's appreciation for each other and how well everybody connected. I mean, there's so many other neat things to say, but all in all, it's just an epic trip. And if anybody hasn't done an international trip, I would highly recommend it. And, I look forward to going on another one.
Love it, man. Appreciate that. Litan, how about you? Final memory, final thing you want to accentuate?
Yeah. So I mentioned about climbing this mountain called Masada for sunrise at 4 a.m. This is something that in the military, many kids do when they finish this like basic training. They do the same exact climb, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., see the sunrise. And it was pretty surreal, climbing this mountain in the middle of the Israeli desert with 8 dudes that I've never met before. Most of them I haven't met before face to face. That, I mean, I reach a very deep level of connection in a very short period of time, climbing this mountain that's old as shit and seeing the sunrise together. That was super powerful for me. So that's like the one of the memories that are embedded.
I appreciate you sharing that. How about you, Tim? One final memory.
Yeah, I'd just say, and it's the same thing. It's the people. It's Jared's was on the young side of this. I'm on the old side. There were people from all races, all walks of life, all thought processes, and you just got time with each individual at some point. Maybe it was walking up there, like Litan said, or maybe it was in the bus, or maybe it was after the bus. Just picking on one thing they said and having them draw out more. Hey, tell me what you learned from that and stuff. So I think it was we did amazing things. And what's so funny, we didn't talk about Petra. You know what I mean? Just some of we didn't talk about Florentine and tagging and all the graffiti. And there's just so much that we didn't touch on. But I think we all came to, it was the camaraderie and the moments that we spent together in awe together. And that's what Gobundance is all about, is creating those amazing memories that you'll take for the rest of your life and have now 8 new lifetime friends, going forward. So yeah, that's what makes our tribe so special.
Well said. Well, boys, I appreciate you sharing. Thanks for inspiring too. It's getting me all churned up on like, when's the next international thing? I might have to check that out. So appreciate you guys doing it. And I'm sure we'll all talk very soon. See you guys.
Bring a banner.